There aren't a lot of adages that ring true. Most of the time when you hear one, it's cliche, it's generic, it's maybe somewhat representative of reality. But if there's one adage that is absolutely for real, strength in numbers. And the Golden State Warriors proved that tonight. Folks, is this Warriors team for real? Are we witnessing the comeback, the re-emergence of what we saw at the beginning of the season, a team that might actually compete for a world championship? We just might. We'll break it all down next. Beautiful win for the Golden State Warriors, especially after that brutal Super Bowl. We'll break it all down next. This is Locked On Warriors.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube where we're exclusively live. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You can follow me, Cyrus Saatsaz, on Threads at Dog Wild. Also want to quickly mention today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. The easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/lockedonnba and use the code all lowercase locked on NBA for a first deposit match up to $100. And to finish up my earlier thought, you can follow the program on Threads at Locked On Warriors, where we post all updates. Folks, speaking of this Golden State Warriors team, they were back in Utah for the first time since the tragic untimely passing of their former assistant coach, Dejan Milojevic, and Steve Kerr was not there. Steve Kerr traveling to Serbia as part of the funeral procession. So Kenny Atkinson, the much maligned Kenny Atkinson, filled in, and his motif apparatus, his agenda was pretty apparent. Let's get everybody playing. Let's spread this thing out and evenly distribute minutes so that everyone could play. And it was successful. I'm looking at the box score right now. 8 players finished in double figures. 8 players hit a three-pointer in tonight's game. The Golden State Warriors, for starters, this was a highly efficient game against a Utah Jazz team that the Warriors are now starting to put some distance between in terms of the play-in standings. The Warriors now have a game and a half lead over the Utah Jazz, who they play again Thursday as a makeup for that game I just mentioned that they had to cancel a few weeks ago. So the Warriors have 2 more games before the All-Star break. They play the Clippers on Wednesday, and then the Utah Jazz on Thursday, again as a makeup, and that Wednesday game is against the Clippers. That's going to be huge. Kyla Mills will join me tomorrow for a preview and just to catch up on everything going on with the Warriors, at least statistically. We'll talk about some matchup numbers defensively, which 5-man lineups are thriving. But this was just a consistent, beautiful played basketball game. This was Warriors basketball. I don't know really how else to describe it. It was I mean, if there's one thing it was lacking, it's dramatics. But I think anyone who loves this team, anyone who's a Bay Area sports fan, I think was clamoring for this after that just utterly repulsive game yesterday between the Niners and the Chiefs. If you're still mentally checked out after that debacle, I feel your pain, believe me. So the Warriors doing this was huge. But as a team, though, I mean, they shot 45.5% from the three-point line, 20 of 44 from deep. They were incredibly efficient. It starts, of course, with Wardell Stephen Curry, who is not never mind. I was about to say it wasn't like a great shooting night. It was good, not great. But then 7 of 16 from deep is great. It's fantastic. It's still close to 50%. And Steph, courtesy of a few accounts on social media that discuss NBA stats, 10 instances in the history of the NBA of a player making 7 or more three-pointers in 3 consecutive games. Steph has hit 11. He's hit 9. And then tonight, Stephen Curry was 7 of 16 from beyond the arc, making it 3 straight games of 7 or more threes. He has done that 5 times. No other player has done it more than once. There's only 5 other players who have ever even accomplished that feat. And Stephen Curry, the greatest shooter in the history of this game, it's not even close. I don't even know who else is even in the discussion with him. He's done it 5 times. One more time, 3 straight games of 7 or more three-pointers made. He's done it 5 times. Tonight makes number 5. Duncan Robinson, Dame Lillard, his teammate Klay Thompson, who also had a great game. We'll talk about him in just a moment. Mike Miller. I don't know if you folks remember that guy. I remember a lot of his playing days in Memphis. And then George McLeod rounds out the list. 6 players total have hit 7+ three-pointers in 3 straight games. And Steph's done it 5 times. Stephen Curry's stat line for the night total. He played 32 minutes. He was the only Warriors player to hit the 30-minute mark. And again, this was symbolic of Kenny Atkinson, again, just really focusing on evening out the distribution, making sure everyone gets a decent run. The only player who really didn't get a good run tonight in terms of minutes was Guy Santos, who played some garbage time at the end, played 2 minutes. But Stephen Curry leading the way, 32 minutes, 5 seconds, 9 of 19 from the field, 7 of 16, as I mentioned, from beyond the arc. Interestingly enough, not a single trip to the free throw line, which has become the norm, unfortunately, with this egregious behavior and conduct by NBA officials this year. Not one trip to the free throw line, but Steph still finishes with 25 points. He also had 10 assists. He also had 6 rebounds. What a beautiful night for Stephen Curry. And again, today's date is February 12th. The NBA season is about 2+ months remaining in it. Do not rule Steph out for MVP, folks. All right. There's only one player that I am egregiously biased towards, and that is Stephen Curry. But it's not just because I love the guy. It's because I really, truly believe he is one of the all-time greatest players ever. What we're witnessing when Stephen Curry is on a basketball court is the embodiment of greatness. And so even though I'm biased towards him, I never feel like I'm being subjective in whatever argument I'm making for him and whatever discussion comes up with Stephen Curry. I don't have to be hyperbolic with him. His greatness is blatant and is subjective for all to see. Do not rule him out for MVP. Again, we got 31 games remaining in the NBA season, if my math is correct. That's a lot of time. It's enough time for the Warriors. So let's say, who by the way, are now have a 5-game winning streak now, the longest winning streak for them this season. Let's say they go on a tear in these last 31 games. Let's say they win 25 of their last 31 or some insane number like that. Finish the season, let's say the top 6, top 5. Are you really not going to bring Stephen Curry up in the MVP discussions? I mean, this is a fairly wide open race this year. I'm seeing Nikola Jokic, his name mentioned a lot. I do feel like Kawhi Leonard is a player who his play this year has been outstanding, certainly warranting MVP discussions. I don't understand how the NBA and anyone else is not including Anthony Edwards in the MVP discussions. But Stephen Curry, just keep an eye out, because if this continues, he damn well better be in those discussions. He's having another fantastic season. When we come back, I'm gonna lay down what he's been doing this year as a whole, because this is another unbelievable, phenomenal Stephen Curry year. And if I'm the only person advocating for Stephen Curry to at least start being mentioned, a little utterance of MVP talk with Stephen Curry's name in the same sentence, so be it. But that's my boy. I'm going to fight for him. And it's not because of bias that I argue for him. It's because he's literally one of the greatest to ever dribble a basketball, to ever lace him up and play NBA basketball. But it wasn't just Steph tonight who had fantastic games. Again, this was just an unbelievably consistent performance from top to bottom in terms of the number of players who just really showed up tonight and never made this. I mean, there were moments where the Utah Jazz kept it close here and there, but this game was in control by the Golden State Warriors from beginning to end. Been a while since we've seen this Warriors team in cruise control, just taking care of business, where you just know, right? Like the confidence as a fan base, that's been missing for months. The confidence is back, folks. Like I know you all are feeling good about this team right now, and rightfully so. Now, how good are they? The Clippers are going to be a massively huge test. We'll talk about that. Again, I'm going to talk about how Steph's doing this season because he needs to be in those MVP discussions if this continues. And then his splash brother, Klay Thompson, had a fantastic game. Led the team in scoring tonight. A lot to talk about. First, though, let's give some love to one of our sponsors for this evening, and that is who is up? Who's paying our bills tonight? Oh, and that is one of my favorite sponsors, one of my favorite applications, and that is PrizePicks. Well, here's the thing, Steph. This is how I know Stephen Curry is starting to turn it around. There was a stretch this year where Steph, his number on PrizePicks, right? The whole premise of PrizePicks, it's daily fantasy made easy. It's not traditional sports gambling. You're not betting on teams. You're betting on individuals and whether or not they're going to, let's say, score more or less than a certain amount. Maybe an individual is going to grab more or less than a certain amount of rebounds, right? Steph's total when it comes to points is always egregiously high. And there was a spell this year until recently where I stayed away from Steph in terms of betting on him because I did not know which version was going to show up. But the Steph of old, at least when it comes to points, is back in full force. Even though tonight was a little below what we've been accustomed to, solid 25-point, 10-assist night for Steph. And the point is, if you keep track of all these individual performances, if you're feeling good about knowing who is going to put up a certain number of points, who's going to dish out a certain number of assists, whatever the measurable is, you should be playing PrizePicks because not only is it fun, but it's an opportunity for you to win money based strictly off your sports knowledge. It's absolutely fantastic. It's a ride. And as I've mentioned, I'll totally DM anyone who wants some tips because when it comes to PrizePicks, which is legal here in California, I'm on it and I'll happily share the information with you. Go to prizepicks.com/lockedonnba and use the code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. One more time, go to prizepicks.com/lockedonnba and use the code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. Folks, the Locked On Podcast Network recently launched their first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. And now you can also find it on Amazon Fire TV. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find the Locked On Sports Today channel now on Amazon Fire TV. So how the hell is Stephen Curry doing this year? Let's take a look. I mean, so Steph started the season on a tear. And I've said this on the show before, and I'll say it again, just because it is esoteric information. What I mean by that is what I'm about to share with you is not well known. And it is by design because I don't think Stephen Curry, like most great players, don't really like other people knowing their trade secrets, like what their strategy is for success. And a couple years ago in an interview, Stephen Curry, and I do believe this was inadvertent, revealed his outlook in terms of his approach on a complete NBA season. And in this interview, he revealed that he sees it as three parts. Part one is the beginning of the season. He goes all out. He wants to start the season on fire like gangbusters. You see him putting up MVP level numbers, usually the beginning of the season. And this lasts for about a month or two. And then he gets into the middle part of the season. And again, this is the part where I don't think he meant to confess this, but he admitted, Stephen Curry's admitted this. In the middle part of the season, he lowers his gear by a notch. Like he'll go from fifth gear to fourth gear by design. And a lot of that is preservation. He wants to keep his energy going. He wants to stay fresh for the important season, the real season, the Warriors Invitational when it starts in April. And, he didn't reveal specifics in terms of like what the exact length of these windows are, like when part one is, when part two is, and then when part three is. And part three is is him ratcheting it back up into the postseason. I don't think he's at that part of the season yet in terms of his mentality, but he's back on. He's having a fantastic season, and we saw the 60-pointer the other day, the one that was a heartbreaker, the only loss they've had in recent history. The Warriors have now won 7 of 8, again a 5-game winning streak. But Stephen Curry on the year, just to break down his numbers, 28.1 points per game. All right, and this is in 33.4 minutes per game. That's important. His minutes are slightly down. I believe in fact, I'll pull it up right now in terms of what his career average is, because I know in some of the years past and in some of his earlier seasons when he was younger, I think that number was closer to 36. His minutes right now, let me see if I can find that real fast. His career minutes average is 34.3. So he's about a minute less than his career average. Again, 28.1 points per game. His career average is 24.8. 28.1 points per game is fantastic, by the way. He's averaging 4.4 rebounds per game, 4.8 assists per game. And those numbers have dropped slightly just because of how deep this team is. But in terms of shooting efficiency, 46.4% from the field, which for a point guard, for a player of his stature, is fantastic. Usually when you talk about bigger players, inside players, that number is 50+% for obvious reasons. You're close to the rim. Stephen Curry, most of his shots are 3-pointers. They're deep. So 46.4% from the field overall is great, but it's his 3-point number, which is just outstanding. Stephen Curry this year is shooting 42.1% from deep. That is absurd. Anything above 40% in general is fantastic. 33% and above is good. That's the Mendoza line. But for Stephen Curry to be at 42.1% shooting from deep on the year, that is an exceptional number. And again, I don't think he's in the MVP discussion right now. I'll finish up the propaganda here in terms of Steph and the MVP. But if this keeps going, and especially if the Warriors keep winning, because unlike the All-Star game, the MVP, a lot of it is about an individual's impact on the team and how much they're affecting a team winning or losing, vice versa. And if this keeps up, I firmly believe Steph should have a third MVP on his resume. I do think it's warranted. I still think he got robbed in 2021. I know the Warriors finished that season as the 8th seed. They were 6 games above 500 that year, but he had just a markedly better season than Nikola Jokic that year. I felt like he was robbed. 2021 Steph was one of the greatest individual seasons in NBA history. And if he keeps this up this year, and if the Warriors keep winning this year, I want to see some goddamn advocacy. I want other people fighting for this. Stephen Curry, in my humble opinion, deserves a third MVP. And if this keeps up, people should be fighting for that. Stephen Curry's 3-point shooting career number, by the way, and this is just how absurd he is as a shooter altogether. He's a career 42.7% 3-point shooter. So as outstanding as 42.1% is, he's not even matching his career high or his career average. I apologize. His career average is 42.7. That is absolutely absurd. Now, Klay Thompson, I want to talk about Klay real fast here because he had a really good game tonight. And Klay's been a topic of discussion this season for a lot of reasons. This is one of his worst years of his career. His numbers are rivaling what he was putting up his rookie and second years in the NBA. In an interview he did with The Ringer, I believe, Klay Thompson, and this quote was making the rounds, I think, earlier this afternoon or late morning. Klay Thompson has said that he admitted in this interview that his game is regressing, but he also said he would be okay finishing his career with the Warriors as a role player. That's awesome. So we're seeing maturation from Klay in this regard, because a lot of players of his stature have a hard time dealing with father time, with reality hitting you in the face. And that's what's happened to Klay this year. He's having a good, not great season, but he also will so that's good news for anyone out there who loves Klay and is hoping that Klay is going to be a lifer with this Warriors team. That was a very encouraging interview in the sense that he's okay with that role. He's accepting of it, and that's huge. So we'll see what happens this offseason in terms of his free agent opportunities and so forth. But don't be surprised if he stays. And the fact that he is willing to stay for a role that is not what he's been accustomed to, great news. Klay tonight was awesome, man. He was 5 seconds shy of playing 30 minutes. He was 11 of 19 from the field. He was 3 for 7 from beyond the arc, 26 points, 6 rebounds. Dude was awesome. Kudos to Klay Thompson. One last thing about Stephen Curry real fast. He was a plus 30 in net rating. Plus 30. And you want to know what's even crazier than that? Stephen Curry didn't even lead the team in net rating. That honor went to Andrew Wiggins, who was a plus 31 tonight. Wiggins' stat line for the evening, 17 points, 2 rebounds. No, but here's the part of Wiggins' game that I want to give him his props because it is deserved. It is warranted. His 3-point shot's back, and that's huge in the big picture. If we're talking about the Warriors being legitimate world championship contenders, Andrew Wiggins has to regain the shooting form that he had in 2022. When I believe in the postseason, and I'll look up the actual numbers real fast, but I believe Wiggins in that championship run led the team in the postseason. Don't quote me on this. I'll look it up right now. But I think he led the team in the postseason in 3-point shooting. And this year, at least entering tonight's game, Wiggins has been shooting it from deep 31.7%, which is awful. Okay, again, anything below 33 is bad. Now, the number's going up. But Wiggins tonight was a perfect 3 of 3. And if he can regain that shooting stroke where he is once again a reliable 3-point shooter, where you're not cringing every time he puts up an outside shot, Maroon. I mean, it would be unbelievable if we can see that version of Wiggins come back, and it's looking like it. And his postseason, by the way, in 2021, 2022, just pulling up his numbers right now. Okay, so he shot, according to this, he shot 33%, which is good, not great. I don't know why I thought he was like the leading 3-point shooter for the team in the postseason. Maybe it was the NBA Finals. I don't know. I could have swore I heard that somewhere. But regardless, Andrew Wiggins, a plus 31. Yeah, be optimistic, folks. Be excited, folks. I mean, this is incredible. This really is. So Wiggins had a fantastic night. And just going across the board real fast in terms of the other leaders. Again, Wiggins had 17. Your 2 scoring leaders were Steph and Klay. Steph with 25. Klay leading all scorers with 26. Jonathan Kuminga had a so-so game tonight. I thought it was a little sus that he did not finish either the first half or the end of the game. You would think someone who's established himself as the second best player on this team, which he has, would be cemented to finish games no matter what. But at the same time, when you look at the minute breakdown, he played 27 minutes. And you can see Kenny Atkinson's agenda for this game tonight was fairly simple. It was, let's keep this thing balanced. Let's get everybody minutes. He stuck very hard to his rotations. And so even though Kuminga did not finish the game, still had a good 14 points, was 4 of 10 from the field, hit his 1 3-pointer that he put up, only had 2 rebounds. So not a good, not great night for him. He had 3 turnovers as well. I saw someone in the chat mention that he sometimes struggles with length. I've explored that theory, but then I've seen him play against teams that are incredibly long and big, and he has no problems with it. So I don't know, man. Everybody has off nights, and Kuminga, if Kuminga's off nights are 14 points in 27 minutes of play, shooting 40% from the field, I'll take it. For a kid who's 21 years old, the second youngest player on this team, it's all good. Gary Payne II, by the way, his second game back after a series of injuries, scored in double figures again. He looks good. His impact, you can tell. It doesn't take a basketball savant or expert to watch a Warriors game and see GP2 out there and think, damn, that dude is making an impact. So, and he had another fantastic game tonight, 11 points, a perfect 4 for 4 from the field. He had his one, has even missed his shots as he came back. I could have swore his stat line the last game was perfect as well. Was a +9 in net rating. And rounding out the other players who scored in double figures, Draymond Green, who was in foul trouble early in this game, he was brought back in, I believe, with 4 fouls and just played through it. He finished with 12 points. His offense has been markedly improved this year. Was 5 for 7 from the field. Dre made that buzzer beater at the half. Was it the half of the first quarter? I think it was. Yeah, I think it was to end the half. He hit a shot from midcourt, which was awesome. So Draymond Green finished with 12 points, grabbed 9 rebounds, grabbed 8 assists, not a triple single for Draymond Green. And other other scores in double figures. Again, GP2 I mentioned had 11 points. Brandon Pajemski had 10 points in 24 minutes of play. And then Trace Jackson Davis, who played just 9 minutes, had 11 points. And when we come back, we're going to talk about Trace because something tells me he needs to play. And his DNPs are a little baffling. I know we all know Steve Kerr has no patience for rookies and for young players. And so clearly, he'll just banish Trace Jr. if the performance is not up to snuff. But something tells me Trace Jr. has to be in this lineup and has to be a part of this if the Warriors are going to be legitimate contenders going into the postseason. And I saw something tonight that I absolutely loved. And we'll talk about that in just a moment after we give some love to our other sponsor for this evening, which is BetterHelp. And look, after that 49ers game yesterday, first of all, this is me as a person, just to reveal how pathetic of a human being I am. When my sports teams lose, it legitimately bums me out. I think much more so than a human being should be bummed out. When the Warriors, until this recent ride of success, before they had a 5-game winning streak, before they won, 7 of their last 8, I hope I'm correct on that, they've had a hard season. I mean, they had fallen, 5 games below 500? 4 games below 500, whatever it was. I think it was 5. I mean, that bummed me out. That Niners game yesterday bummed me out. That stuff depresses me. And I know these aren't necessarily real world type problems, but look, everybody's different. Certain things might affect you differently. And if you're feeling down in the dumps, if you're feeling anxious, if whatever is going on in your life is bringing you and putting you to a place where you're not happy, therapy is something that is out there for you. There is no stigma against it. Dude, fight whatever image issues there are with seeking help for the most important organ in your body, your brain. And that's where today's show, which is brought to you by BetterHelp, give online therapy a try at betterhelp.com/lockedonnba and get on your way to being your best self. There is absolutely nothing wrong with seeking help to find some happiness in this world. Even if you're someone like me and sports is what makes you depressed, there is someone out there who can help you with that. BetterHelp has an army of therapists waiting to at least try and help you. They have so many therapists. You can recycle different ones until you find a therapist that works best for you. And you don't have to drive to an office. You're not wasting gas. You're not wasting time. It is absolutely a phenomenal resource to help you get through this craziness we call reality. So if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be flexible and suited to your schedule. Visit betterhelp.com/lockedonnba to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/locked-on-NBA.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Our one final segment of Locked On NBA. You can follow me on Threads at DogWild. Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. For the everydayers, we're back at this tomorrow with my partner in crime on this program for 2 days a week, Kylan Mills. She's going to be joining me. We're going to break down this game some more and then discuss that heavyweight fight that's coming on Wednesday. Warriors and Clippers. The Warriors passed a huge test when they beat the Phoenix Suns on Saturday. That was a thriller in and of itself. But now they're facing a different beast. The LA Clippers are the NBA's elite this year. Last time I touched on the standings, I mentioned the fact that there was a four-way tie in the NBA for first place. And the Clippers were one of those four teams. If we look at the standings today, there's one team in first right now, and that's the Minnesota Timberwolves. And again, Anthony Edwards, it really is shocking he's not in the MVP discussions more than he should be. What an unbelievable player he is. But a half game behind the Minnesota Timberwolves are the LA Clippers, who have completely turned things around. They're currently 35-16 on the season, and they're tied for second with the OKC Thunder. Both teams a half game behind Minnesota, and then the reigning champion Denver Nuggets are in fourth place right now, just one game back. So Wednesday is a huge test for the Golden State Warriors, just in the sense that they're playing now one of the elite in the NBA. Now, who are the elite in this beautiful game that we love to follow? I mean, you got to mention the Boston Celtics, right? They have the best record in the NBA as a whole. A lot of people are calling them the favorites to win the world championship this year. Maybe rightfully so. Something tells me the Milwaukee Bucks, even though they've had a roller coaster of a season, they had a midseason head coaching change, very reminiscent of when LeBron poo-canned David Blatt some years ago. This time, Giannis got rid of Adrian and replaces him with Doc Rivers, who, on a side note, in my humble opinion, is grossly overrated as a head coach. But nonetheless, with the amount of talent the Milwaukee Bucks have, I consider them to be among the elite, and I think they will be in that final two. It wouldn't surprise me if we see the Celtics and the Bucks facing off in the Eastern Conference Finals. The New York Knicks are another heavyweight type team. They're looking damn good this year. And then you look at the West, and it's Minnesota, the Clippers, the Thunder, the Nuggets, maybe the Suns, maybe the Pelicans. I don't know if the Pelicans are in that same level, but they're good. They're damn good. And we're going to find out if the Warriors are in that discussion as well. That's a huge game. It's a good thing it's at home. And I'm fascinated by that game. Now, one thing I wanted to touch on to wrap up the show tonight, we only got a minute left here. The Trace Jackson Davis Draymond Green combo, I want to see more of that. Now everyone's talking about how the offense and whatever problems the Warriors had for over half a season this year got unlocked. It got released because the puzzle piece was fit when Draymond Green came back from a suspension. And suddenly you had Draymond facilitating the offense, keeping everything flowing with Kuminga and Andrew Wiggins playing together, right? The net rating for that duo was awful. People thought it was just a lost cause having those two play together. Then Draymond comes back, and all of a sudden now you're seeing Wiggins and Kuminga playing great basketball together with Draymond facilitating. And when you add Stephen Curry to the mix, you have close to your full identity. But there are going to be games this season, and there are going to be opponents. The Nuggets are a team that especially comes to mind talking about this. The Lakers comes to mind talking about this. When the Timberwolves is another one. There are some really big teams out there. And even though this Dre, Kuminga, Wiggins lineup is working so far, when you're talking about a 7-game series against a massively huge lineup like those teams I just listed, you're still very small. And what I do hope we see in this stretch, 30-plus games remaining of the regular season, is Trace Jackson Davis starting to get some real minutes. I don't know if seeing him tonight for 9 minutes was a coincidence. I don't know if that was scripted and planned, but Draymond is clearly a player coach out there who is a fantastic leader, right? And he's bringing out the best in Kuminga. He's helping rejuvenate Andrew Wiggins. And I want to see Trace Jackson Davis out there with Dre. I want to see a big run where we have a 5-man lineup of Steph, Wiggins at the 2 where he's naturally positioned, Kuminga at the 3 so you don't see these bigger, longer teams causing problems, Draymond Green back at the 4 where he naturally should be playing and where there's less burden on his body playing against bigger players. And then we have Trace Jackson Davis, so you have a natural 5 there. I want to see that. And if that works, folks, If that 5-man unit can dominate, the Warriors are legitimate world championship contenders. I'll go to the grave saying that. I really believe it. Thank you for joining me tonight. We'll be back at this tomorrow with Kylan. Bye-bye!